Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Dr. Tarana, and congratulations on your new book, The Courtesan, Her Lover, and I. So, Tarana is not just a creative writer or a storyteller, she also is a cultural historian who's written extensively on food history as well. And this book, The Courtesan, Her Lover, and I, is an absolute delight to read. And for her, she's actually written another book called The Begum and the Dastan, which won the Kalinga Literary Award. Even that novel is also based in Rampur, just as The Courtesan, Her Lover, and I. So I think we could open this discussion by speaking about Rampur and what it means to you.
That is, I think, my favorite question. Thank you so much for being here post-lunch. It's so difficult to really sit through a session. And thank you for Hortus for having the book launch here. It means a lot for me. So Rampur, I'm sure most people are not really aware, and as Priya just told me that if you Google Rampur, a lot of Rampurs come up. So this Rampur is in Uttar Pradesh, the north of India. It's about 190 kilometers from Delhi, and it used to be a princely state under the British. And you see, the importance of Rampur, which has actually been lost, it is that this became the cultural node after 1857, when the Mughal Empire came to an end and the Awadh Empire on the other came to an end. So Rampur became the cultural node where all the poets and historians and the wives, that is the dancers, and the cooks, as well as manuscripts and paintings came. And so it became the cultural center, the cultural hub of North India, because it was a prosperous state, and Nawabs of Rampur were like, we don't care about 1857, we are too small and we'll probably get wiped out, so let's just support the British, which was wise for, in a way, because they were able to, have this cultural hub that they generated and they supported. So that is why coming to Rampur, my ancestors are from Rampur, my husband's ancestors are also from Rampur. So when I came to live there in 2010, I started researching the history of Rampur, and I started researching about the cultural aspect, the women of Rampur, the poetry. There was just so much. And then the cuisine of Rampur. So that's how Rampur became such an important place for me.
Yeah, it's a very important sort of spatial history as well that you have tried to do in this book. And quite interestingly, your dedication, that's what struck me. It is to the Tawaifs. And you say they are flames who danced, burnt, and then were forgotten.
Yes, so
I don't think, we in Kerala, we are very familiar with the idea of the courtesan, the woman who actually was not just a sexual object. She wrote, she sang, she was an artist, and she could hold her own in intellectual conversations with men.
yes, so Priya just told me that, we do not know anything about what is a courtesan. We have no concept of a tawaif. So in North India, the tawaifs were women who were trained in the art of dancing and music, singing. They also knew Persian and Urdu and Hindustani, Hindi, all of that, and a lot of them were also writers. So they were not just entertainers or sexual objects. In fact, maybe you have heard of Begum Akhtar, maybe you have heard of Gohar Jan. So they were not women who were merely sexual objects. They had their patrons. A patron it was sort of like a marriage, like a woman is with that patron for a long time, but she writes and she sings and entertains as well. Maybe you have seen Umrao Jan, and that has a wonderful depiction of what the tawaifs were at that time. So there was no force in it. You see, they were not forced to take on customers like that. And remember that education amongst women was very, very low in the late 19th century and early 20th century. Only some courtly women would know how to read and write. The Tawaifs, on the other hand, were highly educated. And they could talk to you about music, about poetry. Intellectually, they were extremely well versed in talking about culture. So it was sparkling conversation, it was beautiful music, and it was also dance. So if you wanted to listen to music, or you wanted to listen to poetry, or you couldn't switch on your TV or your YouTube, you had to go across to a person who can give that to you. So that is the importance of Tawaif. So this book is about a Tawaif called Munni Bai Hijab, and she was a Tawaif. She was a very well-known Tawaif of Kolkata or Calcutta at that time it was. And these Tawaifs had come when Awadh came to an end, and Wajid Ali Shah came to Calcutta, and with him a lot of Tawaifs also came to Calcutta because he used to patronize his Awadhi culture and music and poetry over there. So Munni Bai Hijab came from Awadh, and she was an expert singer and dancer. She also wrote poetry. This book is about her. But unfortunately, we do not know anything about her poetry. We only know about her because Dag Delvi, a very renowned poet of Urdu at that time, fell in love with her and he wrote about her. So he actually eclipsed her writing. Yeah, so that was a very difficult time for women writers.
I think the story actually follows a parallel structure, right? On one hand, you have Dag Delvi, the writer, his muse, and on the other hand, you have a contemporary writer or an aspiring writer, Rukmini, who's again caught in a very complex situation. Well, I think we have heard resonances of this. She's a Hindu woman married to into a Muslim family, and she has her own set of restrictions there. And she's trying to recapture the life of the Tawaif, right? So yes. It's a very layered narrative. And what struck me was the fact that these women are struggling to write. And that has been a sort of, the literary history has been filled with women who have been struggling to write, use their own names. So Munni Bai actually uses, her pen name is Hijab, the veil. And,
yes, but then she's known about as Munni Bai Hijab. Like she doesn't want to hide behind it. The wives are more free women, you see.
Okay, all right. So, finally she ends up being the stereotypical muse when she herself was a writer. So I think that actually talks about the problems a woman faces while writing, especially writing creatively.
Yes, so the basic idea of this book, The Courtesan, Her Lover and I, is about two women writers. So the woman writer who is a Tawaif, that is Munni Bai Hijab, lives in the 19th century in Calcutta. And the woman who is living today, she's called Rukmini. She's also an outsider. Like the Tawaifs were in a way an outsider because they lived on the fringes of society, you know. They were never accepted in society, yet they were such an important part of society and such an important part of cultural development. In the same way, Rukmini is an outsider because she is a Hindu married into a Muslim family out of her own choice. As well as she's returned to Rampur and she wants to take up writing, and she comes across these writings by Dag, that is the poet, the Urdu poet, who was in love with hijab, you see. So she is really astounded and she says, but what happened to hijab? Like hijab is the writer, right? What happened to her works? We all know about Dag Delvi's works in Urdu, but nobody knows about hijab. We only know her through this male gaze of this poet who is absolutely in love with her, and their love affair continues for 20 years with ups and downs, which are again, we can see through Dag's letters which are preserved. So it is a male gaze. Now Rukmini, as I was, I mean, like it's kind of autobiographical, because I was also a struggling writer in Rampur. So Rukmini says, what about this woman? I mean, what, did she really love him? Was she just using him? And what happened to her writing? So these are the questions that, that Rukmini asks of hijab. And she asks of herself also, what is my identity as a writer writing today? What will my struggle be, you know? So it is about two women writers across 2 centuries.
And another writer, that is you, right?
Yes, and a third writer, yeah, that's me.
So what is the type of research that must have gone into it? Because you have actually used these letters that were written. There are diary entries at times. Yes. And you said, you told me while we were speaking back in the lounge that Rampur doesn't have a library. There's just a place where you have manuscripts, right?
Yeah,
so what is the type of research that went on?
Okay, yes. You know, Rampur has a Raza library, which has, as I said, that most of the manuscripts of the Mughals, as well as from Awadh, when the libraries were being burned in 1857, so the Rampur Nawabs acquired these Mughal paintings and manuscripts, and then it becomes the biggest repository of manuscripts and Mughal paintings in India, and people are not really aware of. And some of these manuscripts pertaining to my research in Dag, they were the letters of Dag, which were collected by people. Because at that time, just understand that if you write an email today, you just send it off, right? And there is a record of those emails. But what happens then? So what they used to do was they used to write a letter. They used to write a copy of that letter, keep it with themselves, and send off that letter with a record of written to this one. And so there was a postal system. Thankfully, that was one thing good that the British did. So the record of the letters of Dag were preserved. But nobody bothered to preserve Munni Bai Hijab's letters to Dag. I found just 3 letters. So my research involved these letters first, because Dag goes on and on about how much he misses her, and you know how much in love he is, and how she hurt him, you know, by her words. So she was just herself with him. That's what I found. She was not overawed by this big 30-year-older big author who was, you know, she wasn't overawed even though she was a very young person. At the same time, she had a very strong sense of identity. That's what I could understand through these letters. Then there were diaries, because Dag was a very open kind of a person, and he would sit with his friends and he would just say, okay, today Munni Bai, I wanted to speak to Munni Bai, and this is what she said, and this is what we did. So all the instances in the book about them are based on these diary entries. So the research also involved the Roznamcha. There were just a handful of Hijab's poems that not even poems, just sher that I could find, because some biographers noted them down. The rest of her sher are lost. But then I look at the sher and I say, these are shares about love and longing and this and that. And, you know, where is the Hijab that Dag was saying that she's so fiery, she gets so angry, and she's like this viper-tongued woman? That won't come across in the sher. But some of the sher have that little tang, you know, and I was so happy to find that. So this was the part of the research, and it was an amazing research from the Raza Library, as well as Rekhta, as well as there are different people that I had to go to, and different secondary sources that I found about the Tawaif life. Then I had to go to Calcutta also, because we don't know where Munni Bai is buried, what happened to her at the end. So that search was another search that I've written about in the book.
Well, when she speaks about Rampur, that flavor just comes out in the narrative. And I think different writers use different strategies to bring out local flavor, particularly when you're not writing in the ethnic language, you're writing in English. So I think one strategy that you have used is you use Urdu a lot, right? All the chapter titles are in Urdu, and you have given a translation. How was it to write a tale so deeply embedded in the, what do I say, in the locale? How do you feel translating it into English?
It was very difficult. I mean, one thing about the colonists is that they've given us English. The sad part is that we feel that we can express ourselves in English, but I cannot say it here because there are such wonderful Malayalam and Tamil writers, Kannada writers. I love, but of course I only read their translations. Unfortunately for us in North India, we are writing in English. Though I'm not as good in Urdu, which is my language, and Hindi, as I am in English. That's the sad part. But the good part is that at least I can speak to you and you can understand me. That's one good point about English. So I was at times, the style and you can understand, the style of the thing that is in, you get from Urdu or Hindi, the letter that's written in Urdu or Hindi. Like you say, tu bhulne ki cheez nahi, khoob yaad rakh. You understand? You are unforgettable. Now that's just one thing in English, but the way it's said in Urdu is absolutely different. So that translation of Daag's poetry was very difficult. Hats off to you. I mean, how can you do it? Every language has its own layers, and the chapter headings came last because I said that the protagonist, that is Rukmini herself, is falling in love with somebody who actually understands her. She is also searching for her identity, as Munnibai Hijab was searching for her identity. And so these are the various stages of ishq that, according to Sufi tradition, a person goes through, like uns, then ishq, and all of that are the different stages of ishq which she is going through while she is researching.
Yes. Another thing which we often come across in writings about, even from writing from Arab countries, and particularly this is of great interest to the Western critic who looks at the veil or the hijab as a sort of symbol of repression. But I think that has been very clearly dismantled in your narrative, where Munnibai actually looks upon the hijab as something which gives her dignity, something which elevates her status in society. And in the parallel narrative, you have this Hindu, erstwhile Hindu Rukmini, who deliberately wants to transition into a sort of conventional Muslim household. So the veil, rather than being a very simplistic symbol, is becoming very complex, very layered. Would you like to talk about that?
Yes, so it is very interesting that Munnibai, who was a Tawaif, took the pen name of hijab. And hijab, of course, you all know what hijab is. What was she trying to say through that? Was she trying to attempt a sort of a dignity for herself? What was she trying to do? That becomes the question. And later she does, the Tawaifs used to get married also. Their lifespan was very short, like late 20s, you are too old. Nobody's interested in you. Gohar Jan is coming up. Gohar Jan, everyone loves Gohar Jan. Now you are no longer important. So she did get married and she did take on the hijab. So for her, it was also a symbol of dignity that, okay, now I am a respectable woman. You see? So that was a very Western gaze of people thinking that hijab is very Muslim. It was just Muslim. It was also Rajput, and it was practiced in a number of societies in India. And it was not repressive also, yet in some ways it restricted the women's movement also. So it was both. It's just too layered a thing to understand with just one thing, okay, it restricts women. It does. But then women were writing also while they were veiled. There was Jahan Ara, the daughter of Aurangzeb, who was writing a biography, and there was Humayun's biography also written by all these Mughal women were veiled in this, not really veiled in that sense, but they had separate quarters. You see, so any simplistic definition in Indian society is something that we should really, think again and say, understand that how much the colonists are still there in our heads. We are much too complex and too diverse for
even when you look at writings from Iran, you have women who actually protested when the Shah asked them to unveil, because they thought of it as a sign of their elevated status in society. Only the elite women were allowed to veil. I think we have sort of brought it down very simplistically, associated with one particular community and seen it as a symbol of repression. So I think it becomes very politically correct to actually read this narrative and to understand the layered significance that it holds. And coming back to the love letters they wrote, actually, they're just not letters of passion or erotica. They actually talk about aging as well. sort of intimate confession that goes on in these love. Because when we talk of love, it's all about youth, it's all about passion. But these love letters, even though you call them love letters, are much more than that. And I think we are talking to a generation that doesn't know how to write letters.
Yes, read very short love messages,
icons.
symbols and icons are enough to express love. So Hijab writes to, so Dag Delvi, of course he's much older, so he's writing about, I have got aching knees and can you get me dentures made in Calcutta, and they are lovers, they have this strong bond, but yet aging is, again, something, it's very Gora thing that, you have to be young. Oh, why? Our society respects the elderly. Please be comfortable about aging. It's not easy. So one strand is also about menopause. I love talking about it because...
Yeah, we should, because when women write, they take perhaps years to write. And every 28 days, they go through the cycle, but no woman ever writes about it. Very rarely do they write. Nobody ever goes through menopause, because such women don't deserve to be written about. They're silenced or erased. But this is a love story with a big difference.
Yes, so Rukmini, who is the modern woman, is also undergoing menopause. And but she is like in denial. No, I can't undergo menopause. And her father-in-law, who is also a gynecologist, which is actually my mother, but don't tell her that. So he says that, my dear child, you're leaving your job and you're doing these things. It's all menopause. And she says, no, I can't be, I'm just in my 40s. But he says, no, menopause begins in your 40s. The point is that we are never prepared for it. People don't tell us this is what you're going to undergo. You'll have hot flushes. You'll have these emotional roller coaster up and down. We are never prepared for it because people are not talking about it. And if you go onto the Google, it's all these white women telling you to take hormonal replacement therapy. My mother, the gynecologist, says, it's all bakwas, don't take, this is your body, body is aging, it's absolutely fine, just accept it, So people are not talking about menopause enough. And then it's really glorious to be absolutely pain-free forever. That's one big thing. Okay, you are looking older, but you're more than your skin and hair and body, right? So I think it's also this evolution of an identity which Rukmini undergoes, and she is looking at her marriage, and she's saying that, every marriage, we even if it's a love marriage, we stop examining it. So it's an unexamined marriage, and she realizes things about her marriage. She realizes things about herself also. Maybe it has to do with menopause, You stop being in a cycle.
It is not a midlife crisis, it's midlife realization.
It's a midlife, yes, it's a midlife realization. It's like you've just suddenly got up and, you're just looking around and trying to define her identity. Rukmini is trying to say that I am a writer and I don't care if you don't want me to be a writer, because this is a part of my identity and this is what I want to become, and nothing else is enough for me. It's not enough that my husband is the provider and I have food on the table. I need to be myself also. So that part of Rukmini being the struggling writer became a very important strand. While she is researching the Tavaif culture, she is also realizing things about herself.
Yes, and that is very strikingly brought out when she seeks the help of her friend Daniel to decode the love letters. And this sort of strategy that you've used, where it mirrors Dag's relationship with hijab, mirrors Rukmini's own relationship. And it sort of evolves in a very different way, right?
Yes, that's correct. So Rukmini falls in love with Daniel, who becomes a mentor, just as Dag was a mentor for hijab. And as I was telling you, I didn't intend it. I didn't intend this mirroring. I first wrote the hijab and Dag story, which I was researching, and I just wrote it. The modern strand came later, and Rukmini decided to fall in love with Daniel. I didn't ask her to, and she decided that her marriage needed much, much more, than what it was offering. And that the husband is just waiting for the emotional phase to pass and for Rukmini to come back and be whatever, passive, wife that she is. So, but it's not acceptable anymore, and it should not be acceptable. The marriage should evolve. I'm not saying that everybody should just have an affair. I think you should ask for this evolution and say that, see, I've changed. I'm no longer a 20-year-old that you married. I'm a 40-year-old woman undergoing menopause. Please understand my needs and what I am feeling, you know. That support has to come from a marriage, and I think Indian women should learn to demand that. That's what, one more thing that I was trying to say through this whole story.
Yes, and then when we come to Rukmini's daughter, Gul, she is full of demands, right? So I think the generational change has been clearly marked when you move from hijab to Rukmini to the willful daughter who makes her grandfather aghast. Now, how can you make such decisions as if decision-making is not part of your life? Somebody else has to do it for you.
Yes, so Gul is a 16-year-old daughter of Rukmini, and the grandfather is a doctor, so the grandfather say, oh, your father didn't do anything, he just became a businessman and he's a loser, you become a doctor. But she leaves medical school because how can a person, you know, decide what I want to be, you know? So Gul is a person who's also challenging this patriarchy in a way, and Rukmini says, okay, I don't want this complication now in my life, but what do I do about it? Rukmini herself had a very difficult relationship with her mother, so it is also a mother-daughter and daughter story, because Rukmini's mother left and just went away. So she doesn't want to become her mother, you know. She is having an affair, but does she want to really leave her daughter like her mother left her? And, you know, this is like a very, very complex things. I think all daughters tell themselves, I will not be like my mother, you know. And that's true. You can have the most wonderful mother, but you want to be more and definitely nothing like your mother. Even though you look like her, but you don't like that at all, right? So those are also undercurrents that Rukmini is facing. And through Gul, she is facing it again, because now Gul is looking at her and saying that, what is my mother doing? You know, she is questioning her, and Gul is also questioning the patriarchy around her life. And so it's another complex layering.
I think it's an intersection of religion, culture, and gender. And this intersection continues through the ages. It reinvents itself in different ways. But somehow, even in the age of neoliberalism, it continues to reassert itself. For example, you look at the Instagram reels that get the most, more followers or the most likes, whatever you call it. It's all about trad wives. It's all about women indulging in their very traditional, stereotypical rules. Women who like to cook and clean and shop and make themselves beautiful. So I guess this sort of intersectionality reasserts itself in different ways.
Yeah, that's true. So what we do like is we like to slot people. We like to slot people with their surnames, with their gender, with their culture, the place that they belong to. I mean, it maybe uncomplicates our lives. But it is like Rukmini does like cooking. She loves cooking. She gets after her Khansama to indulge, tell her about the secrets of cooking. So that's another strand. She has those traditional vibes also, but she wants to be, like, everything is a part of an Indian woman. Isn't cooking a part of us, or not cooking a part of us? And isn't, writing or enjoying movies, or everything becomes what a holistic part of ourselves. So that's what Rukmini is trying to say, that, I am more than what you look at me as. And then she also starts a book club in Rampur, which I did in Rampur, because writing is a very, very lonely job. And I wanted support of people. So I have those book club friends, lots of them, and they appear. I've mixed all their characteristics, and I've told them that, I've mixed them all up. The thing is that women, supporting women, is also an important theme. Like, they are unselfishly happy for her. They want to support her through this. At the same time, there are different undercurrents, and she is also looking at their problems and thinking about her own, So there are a lot of undercurrents about women and women getting together and against each other and all of that. The book club element was something that was very close to my heart because I wrote about my book club and everybody loved the article.
Well, I think you ventured into fiction writing in your late 40s, right? Uh, do you think women writers face different obstacles than men writers, or are they the same?
Now I feel that you do have a space for women writers, most definitely. People are ready. In fact, recently I said, oh, I thought this writer was a woman because he writes so well, you know. Because women writers have this great narrative. Look at Arundhati Roy or Anuradha Roy or Kiran Desai and Anita Nair. All of them are such amazing writers and they have this big following. Namita Gokhale, I mean, when I first read Anita Nair, I was like, can an Indian woman write like this so explicitly? I was so amazed, you know. And those different layers that a woman, the complexity that a woman brings to writing is quite well appreciated. On the other hand, I feel that somehow women take, you know, acceptance of women taking it up as a career. Like, okay, this is my career. I'm doing this as a career. Maybe because writers in India anyway not really paid so well or whatever it is. That is not so much there. You need to win bookers like Arundhati Roy to be recognized, and we don't have any big book prizes in India. So I don't know how we get recognized, maybe through articles, Instagram always, but then you have to be always, you know, dancing around in Instagram like a monkey, and I'm sorry, but, you know, that's how you get the views and that's how people buy your books, but it's become very tough. Maybe not just for women, but yes, it's a very small space for women still.
Not just getting published, but having the space, the time to write, and whether you can actually write what you feel, or is there an interior censorship that goes on where you edit yourself, fearing what people will think of you. Because we have this icon, Kamala Das, who actually went through this throughout her life. Once she said she used to get letters addressed to Kamala Das, a bad woman, and the postman would directly deliver to her doorstep. So we have this tradition of women writers who constantly edit themselves for fear of patriarchal critiques.
That's very true, and I really appreciate. You know, I'm really scared. Maybe it is because I'm at this age with my children all grown up, and I have a husband who can support this kind of writing. But you know, I am afraid that people might think that, oh, she went and had an affair, and I know how does she write about this and that, whatever. And I'm coming from a conservative Muslim family, remember? So my sister didn't really appreciate it too much. She's very conservative. So I'm expecting it. And that censorship used to go much more when I started writing. But now I really don't care, you know. I am just going to write what I want to write and, you know, let it be. Lots of women writers are writing what they want to. But yes, what I'm really scared about is writing anything politically, because politically it's not a free space. Maybe socially people will accept what I write.
I think this will be analyzed very politically as well, because we've just released the book. It has to go out into the public. But when I looked at it, I could get very clear political directions from this narrative. So be prepared.
Okay.
And before we move over to the audience, I was very interested in knowing more about the food writing that you do, where you go to the archives and you were actually given a fellowship for scholarship in food narratives, right?
Yes, yes. So I call myself a food revivalist or a food historian because my basic work, initially I started writing about these women of Rampur with my first novel, historical novel, The Begum and the Dastan. But while I was researching it, I found these Persian cookbook manuscripts, which I thought that, oh my God, so much of cuisine, where did it all go? And I just have one pulao. What happened to my 50 shades of pulao? So let me just look at it. So I started researching and writing about it and attempting to cook it with then thank God I got a grant and I could work with the Khansamas and write more about it. So that has become a very important part of my evolution as a writer and my writing space.
And very political as well, right? Because we now live in a
yes.
space where many types of food is prohibited, considered
Yes.
taboo,
Yes.
whereas we are very multicultural.
Yes, yes,
We
absolutely.
ate a lot of things which are now supposed to be
not eaten.
yeah, not
Not
eaten,
mentioned.
Not mentioned.
They were not mentioned. They're
So,
not
yeah.
mentioned in my books also.
Why?
Yeah. So it is, yes. Also, we are, I keep saying this, we feel scared. You know, Muslim woman in North India, not here. And here I can speak so openly, and I made friends, I could speak. And this is a different society, you see. If you go to the North, I won't be talking like this at all, you know, not about food at all. So it is very sad that our multicultural, the different tastes and different flavors are so, you know, reduced because of this kind of totalitarianism. This is how you should think, this is how you should, and then history is being erased. So at least culinary history should not be erased, at least that history I can, or the gender history that I'm working in. I hope that I can somehow, you know, put it in the cloud somewhere, and maybe sometime some cloud archaeologist will find it.
I think this is a strategy that people have used over the ages, right?
Yes.
To subtly write about things which are not supposed to be mentioned. So you have a totalitarian regime, but then you write about food that was cooked centuries ago. And that gives you a very clear idea of what the country was.
Exactly, exactly. Can I read a little bit?
Please do. I was going to ask you to do that.
So my question is, would you like to listen to the modern strand, or would you like to listen to the Tawaif strand? What is your preference? The Tawaif strand? Ah, okay. I thought so too. So, because this is a world that we are not familiar with, and which took a lot of effort to really reconstruct. So this is the first chapter, and this is 1881. That we meet Munni Bai Hijab, rather Rukmini is writing about Munni Bai Hijab. So she writes, Rukmini is writing, right? Hijab, at 19, you had achieved more than an ordinary woman could aspire to. A beautiful tawaif, a published poetess with a divan to your name. We have lost this divan, we couldn't find it. You were perched on the precipice of fame. A new century was about to begin. The stories of mutiny against the Angrez, the lived history of the apocalyptic revolt of 1857 against the British rule, vivid narratives by Apa, your mother. They don't call their mother because motherhood is very aging. So they call their mother Apa, which means elder sister. And Khala, your aunt, were all in the past now. The survivors, displaced and ravaged, had fashioned new ways to live their lives. Company Raj, the rule of the East India Company, was over, and the round and rotund and remote British queen ruled from Inglistan. The world resurrected and new lay at your feet. Even the esteemed Tawaif Malka Jan, now Malka Jan is the mother of Gohar Jan, noticed you and had invited you to her daughter Gohar's birthday celebration at a grand Chitpur Road residence. Malka Jan, half European, with an impossibly fair complexion, coveted among Indian Tawaifs, reigned over Calcutta with her words and music. Malka Jan is half-breed, and her mother, a Hindu, had left the profession to become a BB of a white man, only to return to it after he divorced and discarded her. I think Malka just wants to see the competition. Be careful of her. Apa had snorted. You were a Khandani courtesan, shaped by generations of women, honing their art, folding heritage into layers of their dupattas and the beat of their anklets. Blood, art, and coquettish adas passed on from mother to daughter.
Thank you. And I think now we'll take questions from the audience.
you transitioned from food to this, this kind of a completely different narrative. How easy is it for you to move from one to the other?
Thank you for the question. So, yes, I would say, and it's fiction versus non-fiction, and so it's a different muscle. It's like moving a hand or moving a foot, the different sets of muscles. So when I write fiction, I am in another world, and I find the non-fiction or historical writing much easier, because there you are researching and you are putting it into words, clipped words. In fiction, it is so much of emotions and so much of characterization and what the character would do next, which is why I found writing about hijab easier, because I had the research. I knew roughly how the love story would go, and it was fiction, but there were things that I knew about the character and her life. But when I came to Rukmini, I was like, what will she do? I mean, what does she feel about? And I just felt the relationship with the husband didn't come out very well, and I wanted it to kind of justify what she was feeling. So I find it actually tougher, but more exciting to write fiction, especially when I'm writing characters and the situations and what they're going to do.
And has anybody objected to the fact that you've used them in your... Has anybody objected? Because a lot of time the characters, like you yourself said, that a lot of the characters are based on people you know, right? So do people object about the way they've been portrayed or something like that?
I disguise them. I change their sexes. I give them different quirks. Sometimes I mix two of my friends together, and these are different techniques that we do. I hope they don't object, because they still haven't read the book,
We'll wait for that. So
we remain friends.
are there any more questions? Yes, so before we leave, I just want to add something. I teach a generation that is increasingly reluctant to read. So as a writer, how do you actually see a world where people are sort of reluctant to read? And I think we should thank venues like the one Manorama is providing us with, because it gives us a chance to, for the younger generation at least, to understand there's a vibrant world of books out here.
Oh my God, I don't think you are a society that doesn't like reading. I could not go through the bookstore yesterday, and people love reading in their own language. They were most crowded. I think literature festivals have done marvelous work. They make us come to the fore, and they make the readers like to read us, because when they listen to us, they say, oh, I must read this. I hope you guys pick up my copies. But even otherwise, I think writers also have to evolve. We need to be more accessible. So I use very simple language, Natalia Ginsburg or Elena Ferrante. Why? Because they're so simple too, and so immediately accessible. So I think we also need to be very accessible. You remember when we used to be young, we used to read these books with 1 and 2 pages of descriptions and all that stuff. No, cut all that, because this is not the generation that's going to appreciate it. Come to the person, what's happening, this. But again, that's a very wide thing to do. I don't do it all the time.
Thank you, Tarana. It was wonderful speaking to you, and thank you for the
brilliant audience. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, audience. You've been wonderful. And thank you, Hortus, for having me here and having the launch here. And I hope you pick up my signed copies right out there. Thank you so much.